Our species has been around for roughly 300,000 years. The dinosaurs, at least the non-avian ones, went extinct 66 million years ago and had existed for over 150 million years. And the age of our planet? A whopping 4.56 billion years. For comparison, if we were to condense the entire history of Earth into a single 24-hour day, humanity would only show up within the last couple minutes. This massive span of time can be highly overwhelming, so scientists try and split up into smaller sections, that being ages, epochs, periods, eras, and the biggest, eons, which can span billions of years. There are currently 4 known eons of Earth's history: the Phanerozoic, the Proterozoic, the Archean, and the Hadean, which is where the story begins. The Hadean, or Hadean, I'll probably use these interchangeably, is the oldest of the 4 known geologic eons of Earth's history, spanning from roughly 4.56 to 4 billion years ago. Due to being so old and the circumstances at the time, rocks from this period are extremely rare, with notable exceptions being small, durable minerals known as zircons, alongside meteorites, which help determine the rough estimation of the Earth's age. Because of this, not much is known about this eon, and what we know is mostly based on math, observations from similar star systems, and other hypotheses. Without further ado, let's travel back and dive into Earth's more hellish and chaotic past. In the beginning, around 4.6 billion years ago to be precise, our sun formed from dust and gas, presumably as a result of a supernova of a previous star. Revolving around it is a protoplanetary disk, containing dense gas and other material. These specks of dust and gas soon began to clump together and eventually form planetesimals, small bodies of mass which would eventually form our planets. Jupiter would have been the first planet to have been formed, followed closely by Saturn, the ice giants, and eventually the terrestrial planets. Zooming in on the inner solar system specifically, we notice it's a lot more chaotic. Hundreds of planetesimals would have collided and ripped each other apart, and Jupiter's closer proximity and massive gravity most certainly didn't help. Amidst this chaos, there is one in particular that, along with a few others, managed to survive the nasty bloodshed. We'll call it Terra, otherwise known as Earth. But this isn't the blue marble we know and cherish today. Far from it. It was a barren wasteland, erupting with magma and constantly bombarded with meteorites. Like its brothers and sisters at the time, it would have collided with many other planetesimals, but there was one collision in particular that stands out, one that would completely change everything, and it was by a planet by the name of Theia. Named after the mother of Selene, the Greek goddess of the moon, Theia would have been no bigger than Mars and would have had an extremely close orbit with Earth. Possibly due to the gravitational influence of either Venus, Jupiter, or even both, Theia went off course and ultimately collided with young Earth. The collision would have caused both worlds to completely melt and reshape into one form. Excess debris from the impact would have begun orbiting the reformed Earth, eventually forming one, or perhaps even 2 moons, which would have fused together to form one. This is the most widely accepted explanation for the moon's formation, known as the giant impact hypothesis, as mostly evident by lunar samples from the Apollo missions, which were very similar in composition to Earth's minerals. Regardless, since that initial collision, our moon, or Luna, has been Earth's companion ever since. Now that that's out of the way, why don't we take a closer look at its surface, shall we? Back then, the Earth was, well, to put it bluntly, literal hell. Early in its formation, molten magma would have been spewing out as Earth's crust hasn't fully solidified yet. On top of that, volcanoes would constantly erupt and impacts from asteroids, comets, and other debris would be much more common. Even the days were different, being much faster at roughly 6 hours a day instead of 24. The atmosphere would be toxic for life today, consisting mainly of methane, ammonia, carbon dioxide, and water vapor. It's no wonder the Hadean was named after Hades, the Greek god of the underworld. Of course, throughout the rest of the Hadean, things start to calm down as Earth begins to mature. Over time, Earth began to cool down, eventually creating a layer of solidified rock across its surface, known today as the crust. Water vapor would start to condense to form the very first clouds, and it soon began to rain. Before you know it, the very first oceans had appeared on our planet. They were still different from today's oceans, however, being more shallow and much hotter. The atmospheric pressure was much higher as well, so water was able to stay liquid even at those high temperatures. While we're on the topic of our oceans and the origin of our water, I want to mention the late heavy bombardment, occurring from 4.1 to 3.8 billion years ago within the Archean Hadean boundary. This theory suggests that, as a result of the migration of the outer planets, a large amount of asteroids and comets would have heavily impacted the inner solar system, including Earth. It should be noted that these asteroids might have contained frozen water, which upon impact would have melted onto the Earth's surface. The theory is still heavily debated, however, with some scientists suggesting the events occurred sparsely over millions of years, or there wasn't such a spike at all. Regardless, asteroids and comets would have still played a huge part in helping shape the Earth's early oceans. So we arrive at the end of the Hadean, and Earth has already changed a lot since its formation. Now having a stable surface, an atmosphere, and perhaps even oceans, it's starting to look a little bit more like home. With that said, the journey is far, far from over. There's still billions of years ahead of us, and Earth still has a lot of growing up to do. Our journey continues in the next installment of Paleo Journey, where we look at the following eon of Earth's history, the Archean, where we begin to see the rise of continents, oxygen, and even the very first signs of life. I hope you enjoyed this installment, and I'll see you next time.